I'm really happy to be here today and to engage in this dialogue with Minister Mary Ng. I know she's very popular here, but since we have a lot of people from international audiences, so I make a quick introduction to Mary. So Mary was first elected as the Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill in 2017. She currently serves as Canada's Minister for Export Promotion, International Trade and Economic Development. And she has a lot of very interesting experience in her background around education, empowering women, creating jobs, and entrepreneurship. So welcome and thank you so much for making time today to speak with us.
Well, it's terrific. I'm looking forward to our conversation, Sarojini.
Excellent. We thought today's conversation should be tailored around international trade, particularly in the last 3 to 4 years. We've seen a lot of geopolitical developments. We've been through a pandemic, and there were a lot of questions that came about deglobalization and whether how has that impacted with the challenges that we face today. So in that context, and given this extremely dynamic environment of international trade, can you maybe speak a little bit about how Canada is positioning itself to develop and secure international opportunities, international trade opportunities for its businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's terrific to be here at Toronto Global. Last time it was Montreal Global. So thank you, Nicholas, to you and the team for all the great work always, and for meeting these important conversations. Well, for Canada, trade is incredibly important. 1 out of 6 jobs in this country is related to trade. 2/3 of our economy is related to trade. Canada is a trading country, and making sure that Canada and the way in which we continue to support businesses as they journey into new markets, develop and deal with the headwinds in existing markets is essentially the job. I often brag around the world that Canada was the first G7 country to have a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. And today we have access to about over 60% of the world's economy through our trade agreements. And I would say that it's more important now than ever because rules-based trade is what is really important to businesses. Businesses often tell me that the need for predictability, for certainty, is key because that's how they make their business decisions. That's how they make their investment decisions. So I'm really proud of Canada's track record. There's another former trade minister that's sitting here in the audience, in the former, Minister Pettigrew, and Pierre and I, sort of had a good chance to say hello. But this work has been developed over many through our history, and today, rules-based trade and helping businesses and supporting their efforts in accessing markets, in solving for the issues, and to continue to create an environment in Canada that is healthy for business investment is the work that my government and I and my colleagues have been doing. You are seeing incredible investments in areas where we are very committed to the green industrial strategy. So whether it's batteries, whether it's chips, whether it is energy, whether it is hydrogen, CCUS, and I can go on and on and on. But to answer your question, I think the primary role that we as governments can do have been and will continue to do is create that environment where rules-based trade really acts to the benefit of Canadian businesses and entrepreneurs here in the country, and certainly as they grow into those international markets.
Thank you. And that brings us into a great segue into what really makes that happen, and an age-old tried and tested ways through trade agreements. So are there perhaps any specific trade agreements that you are either pursuing or hoping to strengthen to enhance Canada's trade relations?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about that access to 60%. So everyone in this room, of course, here in Southern Ontario is very familiar with NAFTA. And it was called NAFTA. Today, it depends on what country you're in. If you're in Canada, it's called CUSMA. If you're in the US, it's called USMCA. If you're in Mexico, it's called TMEC. But essentially, it is the trade agreement here in North America that facilitates over $1 trillion worth of trade. I was actually having a talk yesterday with my American friends, and I said, we trade about $140 million every day. every day, $140 million in this dynamic market. We have a really robust trade agreement with our friends in Europe through CETA, through the European Union. We are charting some really exciting ground in the Pacific. So in the Pacific countries through CPTPP. I continue to be at the negotiating table. So I'm at the negotiating table right now with the ASEAN countries that are the other countries in the Asia Pacific. And I have a bilateral agreement with that we're negotiating with Indonesia. And Indonesia, for those that don't know, is about 280 million people. So therefore, 280 million consumers, where a large part, where that part of the world is among the fastest growing. It is the fastest growing in the world. But in this room, we do a lot of business. I mean, in Latin America, we've got individual FTAs and FIPAs. The UAE is sponsoring this, and it was terrific. I mean, I was there last year, and the ambassador I had, spent a lot of time with Canadian businesses that are also, in dynamic markets like the UAE. So, the work that Canada does by creating and negotiating these really important trade agreements, I think can't be understated in terms of how important it is. And I think there are elements to these agreements that we have done, that we have placed particular focus on. You hear a lot about our work around making sure that everyone is included in the economy. So women entrepreneurs, Indigenous-owned businesses, small and medium-sized enterprises, young entrepreneurs. It's really important that our structures also are able to encourage greater participation by those who have often been underrepresented in the economy, because today, those very small and medium-sized businesses are going to be potentially the future big businesses, multinational businesses that are headquartered here in Canada. So I hope what you're hearing from me is very bullish on the trade agreements that we are continuing to negotiate, and that the elements in them, I think, will actually make us even more competitive, because I think rules matter. You hear a lot about friendshoring and doing business with others that will actually provide greater resilience in your supply chains. Well, that happens through agreements, but it also happens through some of the provisions that are in there. So standards for labor, standards for the environment, having chapters that have SME inclusion in them. And because I see John right here in the front, I couldn't, it'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. That was the fastest free trade agreement that our country has ever negotiated. And I'm going to be introducing legislation to bring that trade agreement into effect, because when President Zelensky was here, he and Prime Minister Trudeau signed the completion of that negotiation. So, and we know that while Ukraine is fighting this war, to which Canada is supporting wholeheartedly and will continue to, that there is going to be a significant rebuild that is going to have to take place, and I would like to see Canada and Canadian companies have a first mover advantage, and I believe we'll have that because of the trade agreement that we've negotiated.
Thank you. I mean, you spoke a little bit about the Indo-Pacific agreements. Closer home, and you also mentioned CUSMA. Can you speak a little bit about how it's being transformative for us, how it's helping us advance our trade priorities with our neighboring markets?
Yes, it's really important. I mean, I said earlier that we do about $140 million a day, but it's a trading relationship that is over $1 trillion of trade. Our automobile sector is incredibly important as part of that. We're building electronic vehicles together. The president and the prime minister have met yearly, virtually, and we do it bilaterally, but we also do this as part of North America through CUSMA, through the North American Leader Summit. We have developed a roadmap between a renewed partnership between Canada and the United States. So all of that is sort of, kind of words about, about the relationship. But what does it really mean? It means that we are architecturing very deliberately so that we will be competitive here in North America through this really important agreement, and some of the modalities that keep us sort of checking in on how well our agreement is working is I spend time with my other two amigas. It is the three amigas in trade. for Canada, U.S., and Mexico. All three of us are in Ambassador Tai and Secretary Bonrosto and I, and we take stock of our agreement every year at the anniversary in July. The leaders meet on a regular basis. But what does it mean? It means creating the value chain and the supply chain that is necessary. Whether it is whether it is in semiconductors, which is really important in the growth of all of our business, all of your businesses, whether it is in the EV supply chain, whether it is in our energy exports, how we work together in areas like transportation or the electrification and the decarbonization of so many of our industries across the board. I think that this relationship will continue to be an exceptionally important one to Canada's economy.
That's great. It's really good to see that it's forward-looking and including all the emerging areas that are so important in today's world. Yeah. I know small businesses are important to you. It was very much a part of your portfolio or still it continues to be a part of your portfolio. And they're also Canada's growth engine. Can you talk a little bit about what measures are being taken to provide them access to international markets?
Yeah, it's really, really important. I think if you were to take a look here in our country and certainly others, some of our biggest companies today started as just that small business. And just to give you a sense of, sort of a data point, which is why I've always had the title of export promotion and in trade, it's about export diversification or trade diversification. 99% of our businesses in Canada are small and medium-sized businesses. Only 12% export. And we know that companies that export will pay higher wages, they grow faster, they have an ability to contribute more fully economically to their communities and to Canada's GDP. So the job that the Prime Minister tasks to me is really about doing everything we can to nurture and grow and support the growth of Canadian small businesses here. I'm thrilled that there are many angels here because in access to capital is a real issue. And the Government of Canada have put forward programs like the Venture Capital Catalyst Initiative that will help work in collaboration with the angel investors to create greater capitalization, particularly for those small and innovative businesses, along with a range of programming. But it is a range of intentional programming, whether it's architecturing it in trade agreements or we're investing in programs like the Trade Accelerator Program that will help a business develop that trade export plan so that they can look at their business and determine where is it that they might be able to go, which market should they expand to, how ready are they, and how can they do this in such a way that really will contribute to their growth. And maybe a final point on this is that a lot of small businesses in this country, women are 50% of the population. And we don't nearly have as many women entrepreneurs and businesses that we should, and we need to. I'm very proud to have launched, and now it's sort of a number of years in the making, the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. And essentially, it is about providing capital on the one hand, creating ecosystems of support so that you have access to business networks and the mentorship networks, and then just those pathways for growth. And then third part of it is a knowledge hub so that we get data, and that as a minister, you get data to sort of tell you what is it that you're doing well and what is it that you should be doing better. And it actually has worked because, a couple of budget cycles ago, where I have in my colleague, the first finance minister, who's a woman, I went to her and said, look, this report said to me that we're doing pretty well in terms of providing access to capital for many of these businesses, but we're actually missing the part for those small loans from 0 to 50,000. So for many of you in this room, you sort of think 0 to 50,000. What is that? Well, it's a lot. It's a lot, particularly for those businesses, those women-led businesses. So we put some money in as a federal government. I think it's somewhere in the order of like $25 or $30 million to partner then with others so that we can provide the small lending. But whether it's programs like the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, that has that robustness to it, the Black Entrepreneurship Strategy, working with Indigenous business organizations so that we can figure out, so that we can work together and find the ways to support those businesses and their growth is the work that we are doing. And it's that sort of intentional work that I think is going to get us the growth that we need by the small and medium-sized businesses. I was heartened to see just a couple of days ago, a report crossed my desk about the SME committee out of CUSMA and the sharing of the best practices and how very deliberate work is wiring our small and medium-sized businesses to participate in the North American supply chain is really, really good. But I would say that it takes intentional leadership and decision and investments to support businesses in that way. And today, I'm seeing thousands of businesses start. I'm seeing thousands more of those businesses scale and grow because of this. I hope to be back on the stage, maybe not on the stage, but maybe sort of somewhere else, in a decade looking back and seeing that these policy investments that the Government of Canada has made working with our partners in the provinces and the territories and, of course, with the private sector really yield in productivity, in growth, in jobs, and in better communities all across the country. And I hope that a lot of these are going to be about, companies that are part of the green economy supply chain, because I really do think that the economy and the environment go hand in hand, and that is an advantage of Canada. And in fact, every investor that has come to Canada has recognized its own, which is why I think we're getting the record size investments in FDI that we're seeing in Canada.
Thank you. My next question was actually going to be about supporting women and inclusivity, and I think you already touched on that.
I can talk more.
But maybe we're almost out of time, but maybe just one quick question. I think one of the things that we're talking about when we think about inclusivity and bringing in women entrepreneurs is a lack of a certain mentorship and participation of existing established industries in that. Is that something that you're looking at as a part of your programs as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that there's any OEM or big business in Canada who hasn't, who I haven't bothered and said, so, what do you think about those in your supply chain? So, what kind of businesses have you got in there? First, are they Canadian? Number two, have you looked at the great dynamic women entrepreneurs or the businesses that could be in your, supply chain, your value chain? But maybe a comment I would make around supporting women leaders and entrepreneurs and businesses. I'm a minister that has an economic file, but I can't do this work on my own. And what do I mean by that? I rely on my colleagues, the leadership of the Prime Minister, to introduce what I call economic social policies that actually help support productivity and growth. So what do I mean by that? Early learning and childcare. $10 a day childcare early learning is an absolute game changer, because for those women who are looking to continue to grow who are growing their company, who are growing their careers, having affordable early learning and childcare is an absolute game changer. I mean, I think about in my own riding in Markham, I wanted to see how this worked. I mean, a good politician also, always sort of figures like, we've rolled out this policy. Is it really working in my backyard? So I had my team call around to these places and see, have we actually done a reduction? So yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, you used to pay $800, $800 a month, and now you're paying $400. Well, guess what? That's great, right? I mean, but aside from the savings in the money, it actually does end up being a choice, because if you have, a couple of young, if you've got a growing family, it becomes a choice for you. The other policy that I think is a game changer, and we're already starting to see it, and as I travel around the world, others will sort of, kind of say to me, it's really incredible. I can't believe you've done that. But we legislated parental leave. So parental leave means that a women leader gets to make a choice of being a mom, and then pretty soon returning to her leadership role or her role in work or in business, and her partner makes the choice of taking on the rest of that parental leave. So those are social policies, if you will, but they're social policies designed to help with productivity. And productivity by who? 50% of the population in Canada. So I think that, and I've talked to a number of people since these have sort of, kind of rolled out. And I think they really are making a difference, and they're making a real difference in how we are creating an environment. Governments don't do business, right? I mean, we create the environment to enable a dynamic business environment, an investment environment, and a predictable environment to take place. So that's our job to do. And I think it's these policies, these very intentional policies that, that the Prime Minister and my colleagues around Cabinet have worked on for a number of years, for that very economic growth that I think we all must rely on, that we must all continue to work on, because job creation and how we become competitive in Canada and how we nurture our businesses and for their growth, not only here, we're only 40 million people, but into the 1.5 billion that we already have through our existing trade agreements, and then more as we negotiate greater access, market access. That is the real growth that we will begin to see.
Well, and right on that, we're just out of time. Thank you so much. This was a short but a really interesting conversation.